But anyway, I'll throw it open straight away because I'm a couple of minutes late anyway. Anyone want to talk about anything particular today or any subjects you want to cover? Feel free to ask. No one got anything they want to talk about or ask?
Well, I have a question as usual.
Okay.
I've written it down just to be more clear. So I've become more aware of the suffering in the world throughout history and today. So much suffering: war, sickness, physical pain, hunger, emotional pain, people experiencing so much evil, prison, so much. And I know we say that all that suffer can call on God and he will save, comfort, show a way out, etc. But if they do not know, they cannot call on him. Or if they are overwhelmed, they cannot call on him. So is God just watching until someone else on the earth is praying for them because they are not able to call on him themselves? Or maybe they are, I'm not sure. But
Sure.
I know in my life I called on God, but I did have some knowledge, and I did call on him, and he did answer and take care of me, and so on and so on. But if I had not, what would have happened? I mean, I know this is a huge question and a difficult question.
Yes, a large sort of question. If you're looking at it from just what you think the Bible says about that really is not really going to give you a fuller picture, because you have a whole load of Old Testament stuff which was under the Old Covenant, and then you have a whole lot of intermittent stuff which was in the transition between the Old and the New, and then you have the New. And ultimately, from my experience in engaging God, everyone is God's child. So God wants the best for every one of his children, and that includes all of those who know him and all those who don't yet know him. And so he is at work in their lives, whether they're aware of it or whether they cooperate with it. He is at work in their lives. So think of God as being outside of time and space and being able to engage everyone who's ever lived and ever will live all at the same time, and be looking to bring good into their lives and help them deal with their underlying stuff. He's at work. He's not separated. He's not, oh, well, I'm only going to work with those who call on me. He's proactive because he's love. And he's demonstrating that love all the time with a view of people experiencing that love and then coming into a fuller relationship with him. So there are angels who are assigned to every single person, and those angels are at work in people's lives. So there is proactive things happening, but obviously people have to, in a sense, cooperate. Everyone chooses to do, and there are consequences to people's choices, and there are consequences to people's choices that affect other people, which you can't mitigate against everything. But God's still wanting to bring good out of it all. And he's still looking to work in everyone's life to bring good out of those situations that will point them towards a more fulfilling future in relationship with him. So he's at work in everybody, looking to reveal himself. There are obviously obstacles to that.
We don't see it. I mean, people suffer so much.
Yeah.
How?
But I don't think that's any different than it's ever been. If you follow your own path, which is what mankind has done, then what we call evil is a result of living out of the hardships of doing things in our own strength and suffering the consequences of having those things happen in life. It's like, I think today we think it's getting worse. Actually, it's getting better. There's less wars, poverty, and things now than there were 100 years ago, there were 50 years ago, and certainly what there was in the past.
Mm.
But we only hear the negative things because that's what you see on the news, or that's what you see written in the papers. There's a lot of negativity that's promoted to bring people into a place where they think everything is worse and getting worse and terrible, and to lose hope and be hopeless and disillusioned and all those things. Actually, things are getting better. I would much rather my children be living now than living 100 years ago and perhaps going up chimneys when they're 7 years old, or going down the mines when they're 10 years old. Things have changed for the better in a lot of situations. Poverty we tend to think of it in relative terms. Oh, well, we've got so many people in poverty in our country. But you go back 100 years and see what poverty was like, or 500 years. It was totally different to what we call poverty today. I'm not saying things aren't bad things going on, but actually it's not as bad as it has been. And I do believe things are getting better, and we have to administrate that. So yes, I do believe people are legislating and ministrating and governing to facilitate a limitation on what can go on. That's what the Council of 70 do during the year. They meet to put limitations based on court cases presented to them to facilitate the enemy being limited in what he can do, as well as the natural consequences of things. Do I believe that mankind is going to destroy the planet and the universe? No, because I think there's limitations on what man can do in light of God's will, purpose, desire. But we do have choice, and God is working with all our choices to bring about the best possible situation in light of all our choices. And that's pretty complicated when there's hundreds, billions of choices going on all the time, which he is able, because he's God, to be able to work at, to facilitate all the interactions between people and everything else, so that things will be getting better and not worse. But it's so easy to look at it and just look at the situation, think it's worse. And it's not always, And a lot of it is there is much more public recognition of things that were going on in a hidden way before the internet and before the TV or radio. Those things were going on then. Now they're known to be going on, and everyone's aware of them. So it appears that things are worse when it's not necessarily so. And I do believe that as we arise in sonship, then creation begins to respond to our sonship, and things start to begin to bring freedom from corruption that creation is in, including people. But I also believe if we're really going to reach the world with the good news that is the light that we are to radiate, then we need a better understanding of our relationship with God and who he is, and stop misrepresenting him to the world through religion. And most people are not engaging with God because they have a negative view of what God is like through the religious system that's promoted that angry God who's going to punish them if they get it wrong, rather than the loving God who wants to restore and reconcile and make them whole and heal them. When a couple weeks ago, I was engaging in some activations, and I was engaged in the four faces of God. And I was looking at through the eyes of the ox, and I wanted to see the world from the perspective of the oracles of God, or the very nature of God that is outworked through the things that he says effectively, and the things that we carry in that. And I was looking, and wisdom came in front of me, and she said, let me open my heart and reveal the oracles of God to you. And 5 things got unveiled. And this was all to do with how God views us, his children, and that's everybody. The first one was passion, that he's passionate about us and a relationship with us and his desire for us. The second thing was burning desire. He has a burning desire for intimacy and relationship, and he made that possible even before the foundation of the world. On the foundation stone of creation, the blood of Jesus was shed to enable reconciliation to take place right throughout history. The third thing was intense joy. And we tend to look at each other and see all the negativity about each other. He looks and sees the potential of who he made us to be. And he's not looking at our works, but our identity of who we are. And for him, we're all children. Therefore, his desire, we bring joy to him just because we're his children. Some of the things we do don't necessarily bring joy to him, but we do. And we need to encourage people to see that they're valuable to God, and that the relationship that he desires with each of us is to facilitate that coming about. The fourth one was deep compassion. And so when we look at people, we see brokenness and suffering, and so does he. And he is compassionate and is seeking to administrate wholeness, healing to people.
But is there something good coming out of the suffering? I mean, like if you think about the concentration camps, for example, I mean, so much evil, so much suffering. Is there something good coming out of that?
Well, there is the opportunity for good to come out of it should people respond and see the redemption of their experiences so that that can bring good to someone else. If people are still operating in anger, bitterness, resentment, and unforgiveness, then they're not going to bring anything good out of any of those situations, which is why forgiveness is such a key.
Yeah.
And God is love, and he wants to ministrate to us in love, and he wants us to know love and therefore love. And again, one of the things God's been speaking to me recently about is our operating under an old covenant perspective and mindset, or even though we're living in a new covenant of grace. And therefore, a lot of people still function under the duty and obligation of trying to be obedient and serve God and please God, and they're operating under the law rather than grace. And when we are still operating under a law-based system, it's all conditional on our behavior, obedience, and everything else. And what God wants us to receive is unconditional love. And what we freely received, freely, not under the obligation of duty to perform to get that love, then we will be able to love others in the same way. But if we're still operating under a religious system which is bound by law, which creates obligation and duty in us to perform because of fear, then that's what we've been presenting to the world. And at the end of the day, that does not produce that much good. But God's desire is that we know we're forgiven, that we know we're loved, we're accepted, that he values us, and therefore we then value each other the same way that we are valued by him. And therefore, the commandment, and this is where this conversation started with me with God. He said, what do you think about the verse where the rich young ruler came up to, or the lawyer came up to him and said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus throws it back at him and said, well, what do you think? And he makes the statement, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus basically said, yep, under the law, under the old covenant, yes, that's what the expectations were. But so he said to me, do you feel that you have to fulfill that? And I was trying to be honest with him, and I said, yeah, isn't that a good thing? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself? Yes, it's a good thing. But if it's a law, then it's something you have to fulfill. You're under the law to do that, which is duty and obligation. Therefore, it's not conditional. Eternal life or inheriting life is conditional upon those being obedience, rather than conditional on accepting what God has done. And ultimately, I think we're in this place where so much of our belief systems are bound up with an old understanding of our relationship with God and therefore obedience. And he said to me, do you feel you need to be obedient? And I'm like, well, to be honest, yes. And he says, why? Because
Yeah.
obedience is only based in the law.
Yeah.
So this whole process sort of took a while to develop until I was getting what he was trying to say to me. Then he said to me, look at what Jesus said. And he quoted sort of John 13, love, a new commandment I give to you, love one another. So he said, do you think that needs obedience? So by this time I was cotton on. So I sort of said, no. What does it require? Because it's a commandment. So if you think old covenant, you think commandment needs to be obeyed. So I was discussing this with him and he said, read on. And this is what it says. A new commandment I give unto you, love one another as I have loved you. So now this is not a commandment to be obeyed. This is something to respond to because you've received. So as I've been loved, then I can love. I'm empowered to love because I've received love. That makes all the difference. So John, who was called the apostle of love, had a very different viewpoint in his gospel than all the other gospels. And the majority of things that are in John aren't anywhere else. And he came out of a perspective of the heart-to-heart love relationship. He called himself the disciple that Jesus loved. So he knew it. I'm not sure some of the others did know it in the same way he did, and therefore they weren't able to communicate in the same way that he did to us. So most of what was written in the context of the Old Covenant to people who were still in the Old Covenant and who were living under the law. Now, John now speaks to the disciples and to those who are going to be disciples who are not under the law. And he says, we love because he first loved us. So love is no longer an obligation, a duty to be of something we have to do and obey. This is a response that comes out of intimacy and being loved. So the more we know we're loved, the more we can actually love others and be empowered to love others. So we have a desire that's created by experiencing love to freely give what we freely received. And if we don't freely receive, then we can't give freely. And the law will always keep us under obligation to earning something by works, the works or the dead works that we try and do to earn something that belongs to us by right as sons. So I believe that a lot of what God is doing is trying to bring us into a true relational engagement with him that enables us to receive and know what true love, unconditional love is, and be inspired and motivated by what we've received to live that way ourselves towards others. I think that will change how the world perceives God, because it will change how the world perceives us. And Jesus again said recorded in the book of John, it is by your love for one another that the world will know you're my disciples. And that's a very big difference from, the world will know you're my disciples by your obedience to what I told you to do. And I believe a lot of religion has caught us up into that. And so many people are in bondage to trying to please God. You do please God. You are pleasing to God without doing anything. But as soon as you try and please God by what you do, you're back under the law. Now, it's not wrong to want to be pleasing to God, but you are irrespective of what you do. And if you truly know that and the unconditional nature of his pleasure, of how he views us, that will empower us rather than disempower us. So I think we're living in that scenario where a lot of change is taking place to change and challenge how we view God, how we experience God's love, and then how we then freely give that to others. So yeah, it is a big issue. But I do believe God's at work in everyone's life, not just those that call on him and ask him, or just on those who are praying for others and asking him to help other people. Yes, he will respond to that, but he responds to all his children because they're his children. And we've separated this up into those who prayed a prayer of commitment, and therefore they are God's children, and everyone else really isn't until they pray a prayer. Everyone's God's child because he's made all of us. You know, we're all his children, and he wants all of us to come into a knowledge of that and experience it, which will be life-changing for the world. So if we want suffering to stop, then we really need more people to be demonstrating love. Yeah, because most of the suffering is a result of a lack of demonstration of love. If we demonstrate love and truly demonstrate the love of God to the world, then I believe people will respond to that love and things will change. But we're talking about the leaven of the kingdom sort of leavening the whole lump of dough. And yet I would say that most of what I've seen in terms of religion is the leaven of Herod and the Pharisees that Jesus warned about, having leavened the lump. And so most of what people see in the religious system is either political or religious spirits operating, and they will hinder people seeing and experiencing the truth of what love really is and who God is love. So.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, you got your hand up there. Yep, go for it. Oops.
Okay, yeah. And now I can talk. Well, you said that we don't have to obey, yes, we have to be sons. But my question is, well, this is my experience. I didn't understand that, but I had a person I worked with, and she was very, very mean to me, and I was mean to her too, to be honest. But the thing is that after a long time hating each other, I said, well, God, you said I have to love her. I am going to obey. I don't want to, because I really hated her with all my strength. And I was always praying, please, please take me out of this relationship, take me out of this place, but God didn't do it. And then I went, once she needed help. And I said, well, you said that I have to help my enemy. I am going to do it. I don't feel it. I don't want to, but I want to obey you this time. So I helped her, and then something happened, because I understood that God was really love. Because I had been a Christian for a long, long, long time, but I didn't understand that. And then I said, well, you love this person. That's why you want me to love her. And then I could love her, and the hate was over. I didn't hate her anymore, and things became well, and she left after that. But I stopped hating her. But my question is, if I hadn't decided to obey God in spite of what I felt, I wouldn't have learned something about God's nature, his real love. For me, that was very, very important, because I could understand that God loves everybody, as you said, even me. They say, well, if God loves her, he loves me too. It is true that God is love, but we have to obey sometimes. Sorry.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, sure. I'm not saying that doing the things that God is a representation of God, forgiveness, love, all those things is not a good thing to do. What I'm saying is, when we experience those things for ourselves, it empowers us to do them. And that is because we recognize God's love. Now, God said all those things, like love your neighbor as yourself, and things like that. A new commandment I give you, love one another. He said it because it's a representation of who he is. He's not requiring you to do something in your own strength that he's empowering you to do. So when you respond to something in obedience with the right heart, then you're not doing it under duty and obligation. You're doing it because you know that's what God is in love. You know, so who knows where we are in the process of learning to engage God and touch God, and God's at work in us. So when God, you know, he'll use every situation and bring good out of it. Okay. So even when I've done things which have been out of obligation and duty, and for me, that is wood, hay, and straw on my scroll. It doesn't mean that he didn't bring good out of it and use it. It's like he's used people in the past who you wouldn't really think were very godly, but he still uses that to bring good. So it doesn't prove anything one way or another. You can't say just because God used that situation that God wanted that situation. And some people will say that. And you can't say, in a sense, that if we're not obedient, that God will then in some way be negative towards us. It's like he won't, but he wants us to come to the truth that we don't need to be obedient under the law, but out of desire to do the things that actually he knows are best and he reveals to us as best. So you're in a process, and I think, you know, he's at work in that process with you, and he's not looking down at, well, I did this and I didn't want to do it, but actually he was looking to motivate you to want to do it, which is why you did it in the first place. You know, it's like he's at work in that. You know, he's not sitting back watching our lives and watching us make mistakes and watching us do these things. He's actually integrally involved in our lives and is at work to bring good in every situation, even when we do make wrong choices or wrong motivation choices. You know, when I looked at my scroll of my life and I went before the fire of God's eyes, he showed me all of the things that I did, which were motivated with a mixture that would be, for me, bringing something to me rather than just to God. So some of the things I did out of the wrong motives. Now, they were the right things, but I did them out of the wrong motives. So when I came to face that on my scroll, his love just cleansed all those things and purified them all. There was no guilt, shame, condemnation that he attached to it. I didn't feel, you know, oh no, I feel really bad about it. Although, you know, there was regret and there was sense of, woo, I didn't realize that my motives were quite as mixed as that in the past. But he always wants to reconcile, to restore, and to renew, and to make things whole in everything we do in every situation of our lives. So I think just see that you're in a process, and we don't necessarily understand everything of that process, you know. And I'm not, when I say, you know, God doesn't require us to be obedient, I'm not trying to say that the things that he has spoken and the truth that he's revealed aren't good things, but he wants us to be motivated by knowing his love rather than by fear. Now, how many people came to God through fear? Probably 95% of everyone who ever came to God came through fear, because that's what we've promoted, a fear gospel. You know, come to God or end up in hell. Now, did he turn around and say, I'm sorry, I'm not accepting you because you came through fear? Of course not. He'll receive people whoever way they come, but when they come, he will then be at work in their lives to see perfect love casts out fear. So the more you know the love of God, the less fear you will have and the less response that you will make in fear. You know, so he's at work. You know, I think the thing to say, he's at work in everybody, and everyone's in a different stage of the outworking of those things that he's doing. And if we're still in that stage where we're operating under an old covenant view or a law-based view, he'll still use those things, you know. But what he'll be doing is trying to bring us into the freedom of realizing we don't need to come with that perspective, but to come from the perspective that is unconditional love and that he's at work in us to unveil that love, you know. So you know, he will use even our obedience to the law. You know, is it the ideal, and is it what he wants us to be motivated by? Absolutely not. But he'll be at work in us to bring about the revelation that will free us from operating out of duty and obligation, and more be motivated by love. But to fully have that, we have to experience his love. You know, that's the key. You know, that's why God is looking to engage people in a reality of relationship to reveal his love that will free us from all the hindrances and religious restrictions and limitations that are placed on us, so that we can be free. And when we're free, then creation can start to come into freedom. And if we're in bondage, then creation is still going to be in bondage. So, you know, it is one of those things that in my journey, I can say statements that I have now experienced that other people may still be in. So it will create problems. When I say you don't need to be obedient, and you thought obedience is a good thing and it's something we should do, then that will create tension. And it's designed to create tension, because what it's designed to do is to encourage you to go back to God and ask him, do you require my obedience? You know, what do you require? Do you require anything? And what God really desires is relationship. That's really what he's looking for in everything, is relationship with us. And he's at work to try and help us have and experience that relationship, free from all the things which are hindering that relationship, you know, including fear. You know, and all law is based in fear. You know, and God does not want us to be operating in fear. He wants us to be operating in love. You know? So yeah, just keep pursuing the love, and it will change and transform us. You know, that's what it does. And your testimony is, I responded and operated in what God said, but I believe he was inspiring you to do that. He is love at work in you to enable you to do that and to empower you to do it. And although you might be thinking, well, you know, I didn't want to do it, he was encouraging you to do it. So it wasn't separated from him in the process. He was involved, whether you were aware of it or not. He was involved. You know, and he's always at work in us to look to help us with the choices that we make, to make choices based in love. You know, now we can make choices based in something else. You can't force us, but he certainly is working within us to outwork that in our lives. And he's operating in that way with everybody. You know, most people just aren't aware of it yet. So, yeah, go ahead. Good. Sarah, yeah, go on.
How it works. Okay, thanks. So I enjoy very much your concentrating, focusing on love, and I very much enjoy Vision Destiny 2019, because it's just a fountain of what is so important. So now my question is from, like, concerning the, I think you call it the realms of the earth. And I remember you once told a story somewhere of two girls or women who tried to take care of or attack or somewhat deal with the spirits of New York, or the principalities or something, and they died in the same year. And I thought, okay, I don't want to be in a place like this. So I'm in the Engaging God program and still at base camp. So I know that there is something to learn about the courts and schools and the things it takes to act them out. But until then, until I know more, could you give me some kind of plumb line where it's a no area? So, like, because I'm too involved in a house of prayer, we're praying a lot for our city, so that in all kinds of ways. So that's a question that interests me.
Sure. Yeah. when it comes to doing things in a governmental way, which is where we legislate or we use court cases to give us authority to do things, we need to make sure we're doing them in the spheres of authority that we have and not outside. That's the key. And if you're unsure of an area of jurisdiction, then I wouldn't be doing anything unless I had a clear mandate from God that, hey, yes, I do have permission. I am authorized to do something here. In our own lives, we have authority to administrate our own lives, to bring about our destiny and to see our destiny fulfilled. And there are things that we can do for our own lives, in our own lives, which are different from what we can necessarily do into the world in general. And generally speaking, when you're going to do something legislatively towards a city, an area, dealing with the atmosphere, I would do that with other people. You know, unless you had a very, very clear thing that you had authority to do this on your own, I'd be looking to do it together with others and do it together with joint authority within that sphere. Because that gives you a protection in the relationship with each other. You're going to not step outside of and only do things on your own when the other two don't agree. So there's sort of wisdom in there to weigh up what you feel and come to an agreement. And therefore, if you're not in agreement, then you don't do things. It's much easier to do that when you're in relationship with people. Now, if you're involved in a house of prayer, then there may be people in the house of prayer who've got no idea of heavenly court things or jurisdiction or whatever. And so there can be a temptation to just, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And we're going to, and depending on what sort of house of prayer it is, you may have people who are into spiritual warfare and they'll be looking to bind this and do that and do the other. And, I just don't get involved in any of that anymore because I find I can't be in agreement with it. And I don't want to, in a sense, I don't want to cause problems for people. So I'd rather not do it than come in and try to change what they're doing because they're wherever they are in their journey, But if I'm in relationship with people and they were doing something which I thought was dangerous, then I would probably point that out to them. But it's their responsibility what they do with that. I think that one of the keys is to establish the relationship to such a level that you're confident of hearing God's voice and knowing his heart, and then you can be more confident in what to do and what not to do. Because it is easy to be moved by compassion, which is coming from our soul and not our spirit, and because we see the world, we're part of the world, we're involved, in that. And sometimes our soul can move us to act that our spirit is not in agreement with. And as you become more in tune to the heart of God, I think what you find is you become more sensitive to those type of things. And where there isn't agreement, there is a lack of peace, and that rules in that you find that you're less likely to just do something because your soul, even to do good things, I'm not saying bad things, good things, but they may not be, the timing of those things may not be right. Things might not be in place for us to do all of those things. And, there's a whole kingdom, operating in the realms of heaven, which, we need to be aware of, and, I would say take your time and build the confidence in your relationship and intimacy in the heart of God. Then you'll find it easier to know what and what not to do. And if you've not got peace, don't do it. Then that would be my encouragement. If you're ever in doubt, go back to God. And if you're not hearing him, or you don't feel you're hearing him, don't do anything. Stay where you are. It's easier to stay where you are if you don't know. because you are where you are. If you're going to go somewhere else, you want to make sure where you're going is the right place, so it's always best to stay where you are until you've got a clarity of it. And I didn't share that story of the thing with New York to frighten people. I just wanted to encourage people to be circumspect in what they were doing, because I know when people latch onto something, wow, the courts of heaven, and we've got legislation and authority, and we can assign angels, and we can do all this stuff. People can get excited by all that and then unwisely try and do that without having the wisdom attached. And some of it, I don't believe God gives you, a shotgun to use when, you aren't able to use it. But that doesn't mean that we don't get involved in some things that we probably shouldn't do at that point. So, just pursue the relationship, and in the relationship, God will show you what he wants you to do. And I think that's, for me, I look around the world, there's millions of things I could do. I have the authority to do a lot of them. I have the ability to do a lot of them, but I don't have a mandate to do them, and therefore I would not do them. And so I very clearly ask God what I'm authorized to do and what I'm not. Some things I have ongoing authority to do things, which is what I continue doing, and there are other things I check out every time. Whenever there's some potential disaster, I ask God, do I have any mandate to deal with it? Most of the time he says no, because other people are dealing with it. So I just trust him. Yeah. But I understand the question, and it is one that, when all these things open up and all these possibilities and amazing things we can do in the realms of heaven, it's tempting to try and run before you can walk. And I went through a process, that took me to maturing in some of those things. And I had to deal with my character, and I had to deal with my soul, and I had to separate soul and spirit and my motivations of my heart, which was, my whole transformation process that I went through. And God's still at work in that, so, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah. Stephen, you got your hand up there.
Hello there, Mike.
Hi.
It's more so to run something past you, actually, to get your sage opinion. For me personally, I'm pursuing intimacy, and a closeness and a presence with God, and I'm very conscious as well that I have plenty of soul wounds and early conditioning that is a hindrance and a block to that moment by moment experience.
Yeah.
And I remember from reading your book as well, over time in the process of increasing that split of the soul and the spirit, you've become more and more right hemispheric brain operated. I've been using for the last 3 months binaural beats.
Yeah.
To just get me out of that beta state and that kind of self-dependent state, and more into the theta, the alpha, and the delta. And I've got to say, it's kind of sort of given me an increased consciousness of Yahweh, and I'm more aware of my actions on a moment basis, which I feel the peace and the joy is just, it's gone to another level.
Yeah.
But I've had conflicting views from other Christians, probably more religious Christians, who are going, oh, no, that's the occult, you're going to let the devil in and stuff like that. But all I can say is testimony is, whoa, it's really, really an amazing experience.
Yeah. We use anything that God inspires us to use. Hence, using crystal bowls and using sound and using frequency, using light. And, we have used binaural beats in some of the music that we have, because it does connect you to the more intuitive side, because we are, we're used to functioning from beta wave state most of the time that's linked to the left side of our brain and the analytical, logical work. And there's nothing wrong with that. God's given us that, but it shouldn't be ruling us. We should be also having the balance of the intuitive, the more right side creative, that brings balance into it. Now, in the past, I would have been very left-brained, probably, at least 70-30, and that's not 80-20 left-brained in the past. And now I'm probably more 60-40 right-brained. But that enables me to be more intuitive, but also enables me to then explain that to others who may not be as intuitive. So for me, that works. Using things like music, I remember when I did the Vision Destiny 2019, and I did use crystal bowls quite a lot in that when I was doing declarations and making decrees and things. And one of the first things, I think that one of the first comments on the video was, oh, is this Hindu or Buddhist? And religious people just get caught up into all that. Now, if I'd played a guitar, or if I'd played a flute, or if I played any instrument whatsoever, people would have had no problem with that sound. But because it's an association with something that they see as bad, then they're always going to be warn you off because this is the New Age and the occult and everything else. Yes, there are counterfeits that are out there, but it doesn't mean that the basic principle is not correct. And therefore, in something like that, what would be the problem in stimulating the right side of your brain? That's what meditation does. The very fact that you're closing your eyes and you're looking to slow down your thinking and your breathing is like, it's just a technique to get you into a place where you're more restful, and therefore it's easier to hear and discern. And that's a very, very biblical thing. But as soon as you add something into it, like sound or whatever, then all of a sudden it's like, everyone starts, this is all, well, you could say the same thing with like King David, playing music to King Saul and soothing his demonic manifestation. So what was he playing? Well, it didn't really say, does it? It could have been a harp, it could have been anything, but what it was the intent he was playing it with, which was the key. And so if you're using binaural beats with the intent that it helps you to focus and to get to that place of rest where it's easier for you to discern, to sense, then for me, there's no issue with any of that whatsoever. And any of those people who would be saying, well, that's all New Age and everything else, wouldn't have a problem with, with a piano being played, behind music or accompaniment of some other sense. They wouldn't have a problem with that. But if you go back 150 years and you go back to the days of, William Booth and Salvation Army and all that stuff, or to in the early days of Billy Graham and, the music, they used the popular sort of rhythm and the beat of the day to engage people. Now, they were criticized, and there are still people today who like hymns who will be criticizing the more poppy, rocky style that a lot of churches have. So you're always going to find people that are, coming out of that sort of perspective. I remember when we had a guy who could play a didgeridoo, and so he was playing a didgeridoo in our sort of corporate worship things, and I didn't have to stir up a whole load of people. Oh, he's calling up, spirits of their ancestors, and it's like, no, he wasn't. He was just actually making a sound that was for him a joyful sound. It may not have been as joyful for everyone else who probably might like didgeridoo sound, but actually it's the motive and the intent that what it was being done. So bless those people. They're always going to be around. Make sure you don't sort of get annoyed with them, but you just have to accept that not everyone is going to like anything that we do or everything we do, you know, and you just got to, if you believe, you know, that you're happy, that God is in that and it helps you, then keep going for it, you know. And I think we put some binaural beats behind one of the tracks we did when we did a meditation exercise, because it was designed to bring people to a place of rest, and so activate their more of their alpha brainwaves at that point, you know, and same with all sorts of frequencies, you know. It's like frequencies and using a frequency to carrying intent, you know, is something which is, you know, God has been inspiring for a long time. You know, it's just a lot of people have not caught up yet, you know. So, okay. All right. Anyone else got anything they want to? Yeah. Okay, Jenny.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
I'd just like them to know a bit more about binaural beats, actually, please, and where I could even get this. I'm quite intrigued. I wouldn't mind trying it out, but I don't know how I get.
Well, you can probably find it on the internet, that's for sure. Essentially, what it is, it's a beat which is different in each ear. So rather than a stereo beat, which is this sort of a stereo field, or a monaural thing, which is the same beat in each ear, it's designed to slightly be off in one ear to the other, and that stimulates the right side of the brain, basically. That's as simple as it is. You can go onto YouTube and you can look for binaural beats. You know, again, I wouldn't be looking potentially to listen to binaural beats that may people be using it for another purpose, because other people may use it for a song. But there are Christian people out there who are producing music with binaural beats that you can find. I can't remember. There is, if you look at Christian binaural beats, or, you know, things like that, you'll find there's stuff out there that you can definitely, you know, listen to.
Okay, great.
You know, sometimes it's just a beat, and sometimes they play the beat behind some music, and therefore you're not always aware that that beat is behind the music, but it is there, and it does have that sort of effect. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'm not sure who put their hand up next. Let's go with, okay, Anne, you go first, and then we'll do Stella after that. Okay, go on. Yeah.
Okay. I sent a question to you on the chat line there.
Okay.
And I wanted to know some more about angels. I was asking Father if I could meet my guardian angel. And I believe I did meet him a few days ago and got his name. But I was just wondering, what do guardian angels look like? Because I perceive more than I see.
Okay.
And what is their responsibility towards us and things like that?
Okay. Well, their responsibility is that they're ministering spirits on behalf of those who are heirs to salvation. That's what it says in Hebrews chapter 1. So they're ministering on your behalf to bring you into your fullness of your inheritance. So they're there to keep you safe. They guard, they protect. They can't keep you out of every bit of trouble that you try and get into, but they do rescue people. There are accounts where people have been pulled back, having been tripped and falling in the road, and all sorts of, you know, amazing testimonies of things, really. There's usually more than one. It's usually guardian angels rather than just an angel. And they sometimes have different functions. And sometimes they have been assigned to you because their particular personality or particular area of influence, because there are many different types of angels, connect to yours. You know, God, you know, knows your destiny, and therefore he knows the right angels to assign to you. So some of them, you know, what do they look like? Well, all sorts of different things, you know, and this is where the look of them is not as important as knowing them and relating to them. You know, some of them, you know, one of my guardian angels is a horse with white wings, you know, white winged horse, which was quite surprising to me when I first was introduced to it. And I'm just like, whoa. But it's been very useful over the years in terms of different things, bringing things on assignment, going to do things. I found that the other one is a warrior looking angel in full battle armor, 8-9 foot tall, you know. So I'm like, I wouldn't want to mess with it, let alone anything else. So some of it is because I have certain things that are in my destiny that those angels really help me with. I know others who are. I know I've seen a lot of angels with people who are carrying things or have particular colors or particular frequencies that align. You know, particularly worship, those who have worship in hearts and, you know, have a desire to musicians. They do have one, usually one of their guardian angels is very creative and sort of has this sort of air of, you know, that creative sort of sensitive angel, if you like, rather than, you know, sort of the big warrior angels. You know, they look like that, you know, sense, they feel like that, you know. But bottom line is, you know, one of my friends has an angel, which is a dog called Vincent. Yeah. Now, why? I have no idea. But to them, they relate to it and the name they related to. And for them, it made sense. Why is mine a horse with wings? You know, I wouldn't try to overanalyze it all. Just keep communicating. Be open to a sign. You know, I send angels ahead of me when I'm going on trips. You know, I do lots of things with them, you know, because they're there to help us, you know, bottom line. You know, they're there to help. They do have wisdom and insight into some things, and they have abilities that we don't have to go to places that we can't go to, you know, so, and the way they can go them is different from us. So, you know, there are, you know, a canopy of angels around the throne of God, which is 10 different orders of angels. There are many other orders of angels. You know, I have angels which are personal. I also have angels that minister with me when I go on trips and do things. You know, I have the 4 angels of transformation that work in cooperation with me: winds of change and sound of many waters and refiner's fire and transformation. You know, now those were assigned for me to be able to administrate with them in many different ways, you know, and I look to help people engage through engaging the angelic realm and, you know, participating in all that. Now, again, some people would have a very dim view of engaging the angelic realm because they come from a religious perspective that says, you know, we shouldn't talk to angels or we shouldn't do that, only God does that. Well, if they're ministering spirits and they've been assigned to us, you know, there's a good indication there that we're supposed to interact with them, you know. So just keep on doing it, and there may be others. Ask Jesus if there are any more that he wants to introduce you to, and just, you know, go with the relational rather than be too concerned with what they look like, you know, because it's really the relationship which will unveil their interaction with you in what you're doing in your life and what you have in your destiny. But they are very helpful, and there is an angel which is assigned to us in heaven as well, which is associated with our throne, and has been there caretaking our position in heaven until we've come to a place of maturity to actually take that position. And that angel is involved in many different areas of our lives to bring us into the kingdom. And once I was aware of that, then I became aware of certain things in my life which were trigger points and milestones which that angel had been responsible for engineering, which had brought change to me in my life, you know. And God works with the angelic realm, you know. Some of them are his entourage, which are more of those that are engaged with him and are worshiping in him and engaging in him that way. but there are others who are very, very involved in kingdom government and activity, that are there doing things for me until we learn how to do it. There's a lot of angels who are doing things instead of us because we haven't matured enough to learn how to do things for ourselves, and to do those things in the different courts that we're designed to have those positions. But yeah, keep going with it, because it is a really key.
Are some of our guardian angels, ones that we inherit from family members or not?
No, they are assigned to you.
Okay.
And they're usually assigned to you with the assignment of your destiny scroll, and have been assigned to you even before you came here. But no, I don't believe we inherit them. There may be those that are associated with others of our family if we have a similar destiny, but they're not the same. And they're also orders of angels, not just individuals. So when I talk about the 4 angels that minister with me, they are an order of angels, and there's millions of them in each order. So I can leave them wherever I go, because I'm not interacting. We have 4 here that I am personally engaged with. When I go somewhere else, others of that order are assigned to come with me to interact with where I'm going. And therefore, if they're welcome, they'll stay wherever I go. So, sometimes we engage with an angel, and we ask their name and they give us their function. So winds of change is not the name of that angel. It's its function. It's the order that they're part of. So there are millions of winds of change angels, but they've all got their individual name that they may or may not tell you, and you may not need to know. But if they are willing to tell you, then you can engage with them in a more intimate way. Whereas a lot of what I'm doing with that group is really helping them to connect with people in their process of transition. So I don't need to know their personal names, but others may find that when they engage them.
So tasks that we ask them to do, do they need to be specific to ministry, or is it just generally in our lives?
No, generally in your life. I mean, your life is ministry. You are a son of God. It's not, you're not just on assignment. They're interested in you having a living abundant life. And so, they want to be involved, because they don't separate what we do from who we are. We tend to, but they don't. So they're looking at us as a person rather than looking at our function and what we do. It's so much, So they're very much more want to be involved in every area of our lives in a positive way. So,
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Stella?
Hi. I've gone through Vision Destiny 2019.
Yeah.
And still trying to get my head around it.
Yeah, so am I. Yeah.
Too deep. Anyway, my question is, when in Vision Destiny 29, you were talking about get ready, you might be told to leave or to go somewhere.
Right, yeah.
How do you know this?
Again, you need a clear mandate from God. Some people can fulfill their destiny wherever they are, and it's not dependent on a place where they're living or where they're operating. For some people, there are seasons where you need to be in the right place for that season. Therefore, it's important to be open for God to move you into that. Now, again, don't do anything just because you have sort of hey, a thought, always take things back and develop that, and I'm proactive about it, because I'm looking to fulfill my destiny. One of the things for me, God hasn't told me to move where I'm based, but he has given me permission to travel. So I need to know where I've got permission to travel. So I ask him, when I'm looking at coming up to the beginning of a new year, I'm asking him, do I have permission to travel? Where? And then I know when then I get an invitation, whether it resonates with where he's called me to travel. And then I usually will accept an invitation based on that resonance and reject invitations based on the fact that I don't resonate with it. So the closer you get to the heart of God, and the more time you get listening to his heart, feeling his heart, sensing him, discerning his voice, the easier it is then on those bigger decisions to know. And, if you are, this is where if you have a relationship with people who are also operating in the same way, you can engage heaven together and get confirmation together in some of that. But I wouldn't be talking to people who've not got a clue about any of this stuff to give you some wisdom about whether you should move or not, because they'll probably come out of, if they're your friends, they won't want you to move. So they'll probably go, no, you don't want to move. You shouldn't be moving. Bottom line is, for most occasions, it really doesn't matter, but sometimes it does. And I always use the illustration of Jacob, who he engaged God at Bethel under an open heaven and with angelic engagement. And Bethel was the high country. It was a special place, and he was told to live there. But because Bethel's not an ideal place for flocks, which is what he was, a herdsman, that he then chose to go to a place which was more suitable for his flocks, and therefore he stepped out of that place where there was angelic and an open heaven, and he then ended up in a situation which brought disaster to his family. And because he was not in the place that God wanted him to be, and all the sort of things, and they ended up in Egypt, for 430 years or something, because he didn't stay in Bethel, and he didn't, because he put expedient things before the things that God was wanting. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people will make a decision on where they should be based on first finances and who's going to pay the best job. And the second thing, sometimes they based it, I know I've seen a lot of people with families base it on going to a church that's got good children's ministry rather than where God maybe wanted them to be. They only look for something which was going to be what they thought was the criteria. And to be honest, that's not the criteria we should be basing anything on. People say, well, when doors of opportunity open, that's God who's opening them, and I'm going to walk through them. I would never make a decision based on just the fact that a door is opened, because lots of doors can open, and it doesn't mean we have to walk through them.
No.
Where we need intimacy with God and a peace in our hearts that will respond to know that that's the door that God is opening. And sometimes a door may appear closed because God wants us to engage it, and then we'll find it opens. That's often like for instance, if you're looking at, does God want me to be somewhere specific? You ask him, and in asking him, then some doors open. Just because you've asked him and because you've sensed that he wants you to be open to move or go somewhere. And it can be for a season, it can be for a longer period, but never do anything until you're at peace about it. Now, peace about it doesn't mean that it isn't something that might be out of your comfort zone or difficult.
Yeah.
Say it's just that you've got peace, that that's God's heart.
Okay. And why I'm asking this is after I have listened to Vision Destiny 2019, I had dreams, and these dreams seemed to be at a specific location, and they were different, but the location was the same. Would that mean anything?
It may do, it may not do. The key would be go back to God and say, if those dreams have come from him, then go back to him and say, is the location important? And do you want me to do something with that location? Because, you know, visiting somewhere is very different from going to live somewhere.
Yes.
You know, and you can engage in a location on a visit, you know. That's what I do when I travel to places. I have permission to travel for a visit. I have no mandate to go and live. You know, and people are always asking, oh, why don't you come and live over here or whatever? And I'm like, I don't have a mandate to go there. I can come and visit. But if God did give me a mandate, then I've also then got to check that out with my wife, because we live together. So if I'm going to move, then she's got to move with me or not, you know. So, you know, I wouldn't rush ahead, because, you know, when we moved, the last move we made, from where we were to start the church here, I heard God very clearly, you know, and she sort of was like willing to trust that I'd heard God, but she went back to God and said, well, can you tell me as well? And someone basically just prophesied over her that her time was finished where she was, and that she was sending us here. God was sending us here. So he can confirm things. You know, it's like, it's not wrong to seek confirmation. So I would always go back to him and just get that clarity of confirmation, and come to that place. Now, he asked me to move twice when he really had no intention of me moving. He just wanted to prepare my heart that I would eventually be ready to move. And that, again, challenged my wife severely, because she didn't want to move. You know, and he had to bring her to the point where she was willing for God to suggest that moving might be a good thing. So two of those things, I would have moved, but he really didn't want me to move. He just got my attention, and it was a preparation of the heart that then eventually, you know, outworked when the right time was for us to move.
Okay. And the other thing is, you talk about setting up governments, and I don't seem to have anybody around that I know who's doing this sort of thing. How do I get connected to people of the same mindset? Because of where I go right now, if I even start to share this, it seems like I have fallen from Mars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. I mean, I think that again, release a sound, put out a call that will connect to people. You don't need to connect to anybody unless you've got a mandate to establish something physical. You know, you can connect to people online. I'm sure there are people in this group and in other groups who, you know, are also in the same sort of position. They may not have anyone that they can talk to, or may not have anyone that they can relate to. And this gives an opportunity for people to interact and connect. If you have a mandate to establish something,
I don't. No, I am.
If you don't, then you don't need really to form any government. Government forms around a blueprint that you're mandated to outwork. If you haven't got a blueprint which you're mandated to outwork, then there's no need to be concerned about it. If you want friendship, you know, and you want to engage with people of same heart, then, you know, connect with people on here, and just hook up on your own with them and talk. I mean, just build some relationship. You know, government really is only about fulfilling a heavenly mandate. You don't need government other than what you've got in your own life, for your own life.
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that's about it for now.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll do one more, and we've got Morris there, so you go for it. Okay, go on.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, how are you? Yes. I just want to go back to Stephen, when you were speaking earlier on about listening to binary beats.
Mm.
I've listened to them. The first time I came across them, I had to be very cautious, you know. And then I listened to them. And then also, every time when you do lessons at the end, you know, when you do the opening of the heart, or you close your eyes, those beats that you play in the background, they really, really relax me. And I've actually had visions after I've done those sessions. So I'm just saying this as an encouragement to Stephen and everyone who's listening, and people that are going to listen in the future, that we live in a society where the church, there's so much religion. When you do something outside the box that they're not familiar with, they call it heresy. And I concur with my sister Stella. She was just speaking now. We have families that go to church, but they look at us as like we are weird, like we are heresy, you know. And we love them. We know that they haven't been involved in the awakening. So I'm going through the awakening. I meditate a lot. As a matter of fact, my wife, she can't be with us today. She wanted to ask you a question because I've been getting into meditating a lot, and she doesn't quite understand it. And I listened to Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you know him. He's a scientist. So he explains things from a scientific basics. You know, the heart, the mind, the subconscious mind, and all that stuff. So she was sort of a bit unsure, like, is this related to God and stuff like that? What he's actually explaining is actually scientific. And I know, Mike, you've got a scientific background. And I've heard you talk about that the heart is got a magnetic field. You know, if you elevate your emotions, love, you can actually expand your magnetic field. You know, with the mind, the right thinking, and all that, you can heal your body. That's what he teaches anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled to be on this program and to be doing your engaging God courses. But I wanted to ask that question for my wife, in case if you knew Dr. Joe Dispenza, because she couldn't be with us today. Her name is Lydia. She spoke to you about 2 or 3 weeks ago when she asked about if she could communicate with our son's angel. You've replied her, but I'm thrilled, and you know what? God is amazing. Anyone who wants to connect, spiritual God will get people in touch. We just have to have an open heart, an open mind, and just have peace in your heart.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the terminology that often causes people to be concerned. And you know, when you use meditation, the religious people will associate it with transcendental meditation and Eastern meditation and all those things.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't be encouraging people to do those things, because they tend to be an opening of our mind to something rather than a focusing our mind on something. So if you actually think about meditation as I am thinking about Jesus, that's just, I'm just going to start deliberately choosing to think about Jesus. That's really what meditation is. And to deliberately think about Jesus, you have to stop thinking about something else. So it's getting to that place where you just come to a place of rest, where you're not anxious, worried, or thinking about everything else, but you're just getting to a place where I'm going to be still. So be still and know that I'm God. That's meditation. So the Bible never says study anything. It says meditate. You know, Joshua 1, meditate day and night, you know, and you'll find your ways will be successful. So the Bible's full of verses about meditating. And most of the Western sort of religious thing will be about studying. So it's really just pointer back to the fact that meditation really is just spending some time to focus on engaging with Jesus or with the Father, you know. So it's just you know, it's like fasting. People are like, oh, I'm going to fast. And it's the same sort of thing. Well, why are you going to fast? Well, because I want to spend more time with Jesus. Well, therefore, that's what you do. It's just like you're giving the time. So, you can simplify some of the things, and sort of change the language so that people will connect to the language you're speaking. So if you said, well, I'm going to have a quiet time with God, she probably wouldn't have a problem. Or I'm going to be still so that I can get to know God better. She wouldn't have a problem with that because it's a very familiar language. So you can use familiar language. So when you're meditating, all you're doing is allowing the space for God to speak to you and for you to speak to God, so you get to know God better. Because that it is. Be still and know God, and that's what you're doing when you're meditating. You're stopping all the activity, quietening down your mind, relaxing your body so that you can be still and then know God in a deeper way, really. So that would be my encouragement. Just simplify it, and you can bring it back to some use, sort of things that probably she'd be familiar with, and it will be easier for her to then relax. But the best thing about it is the fruit that it produces in your life will encourage her to pursue herself. And that's the key. This should produce us to be more loving, more thoughtful, more joyful, more peaceful, and then that will benefit her, and she'll, wow, yeah, that all that good stuff started when he started meditating, so then it'll be like, yeah, maybe I can meditate and learn to engage God that way, and I'll be changed by it, so it's one of those things that, again, for some people, it's what does it mean. So describe what it means to you rather than words which you may misinterpret. Okay.
Right. Mike, I just my internet lost most of the things you're saying because you kept picking up. I don't know that you're going to load this on YouTube, and when you did so, then listen to it for the case of time. Because most of the things you say, I don't know if it's my internet. Yeah. It's crackling and breaking up. I don't know if you're going to up this session on YouTube or where I can.
Yeah, I'll upload it later. Yeah, and you can pick it up later. So yeah, I will. Yeah. Okay. All right. I need to leave it there.